and you talked a little bit about culture, and you have to find some partners, and then is it important to snub your nose at the community, to involve them? What can you learn from the community, and kind of how, as you started this with an idea, give me a sense how long it's taken to get to this point, and some of the things that you've done that are non-financial, non-accounting, that have really helped you grease the skids to get where you are.
Well, as I'm sure all you know, back in the day, people would come to the jobs. Now, with companies like Google, who are establishing campuses, all over the U.S., they actually want to focus in right now in Boulder. Why do they want to be in Boulder? Because their people want to be in Boulder. The big problem here in Olean, New York, and Cattaraugus County, they talk about the shrinking population between 25 and 40. And right now, there's a huge push to kind of revitalize Olean with the hope that it will actually attract and retain more people. Now, the community and businesses go hand in hand. Like I say again, synergy. You need a place where people want to work. And it's not just a job. People care about their families, where their family's going to live. So we've actually taken a big role already in terms of the community. I've already been to a lot of neighborhood meetings where, there's urban plight problems, because we want to help out with the hopes that, it's going to bring in, businesses like these guys where, more jobs and better lifestyle for people. So, where you live and where your company is a big factor these days.
I'll put it in an economic term. I want Nick to succeed. I want Nick to have 40 or 50 employees. Because if Nick has 40 or 50 employees, they're paying taxes as a business, which supports the infrastructure, so it doesn't put more burden on an established business, because we've been here. The same is true for his employees. The more employees he has, the more housing that is being utilized, so it makes the environment better as far as the aesthetics, but also just from the infrastructure of city supports. So I'd like to see 30 or 40 of 4 Mile Brewing starting up and being successful. We don't need to get necessarily a $5,000 or 5,000 employee GM plant here, but we need to be bringing people in, and of course, having different businesses creates an interest in the community that helps attract people, because then they can find different opportunities. It's one of our biggest challenges is bringing in young talents, especially in the technology areas, because anybody that's in this area wants to go see a big city. It's real tough to get them to come and live here and want to work, but the skill sets are needed.
Legalize marijuana, Cattaraugus County, right? Just like
Salamanca's working on that right now.
Kevin, let's talk now. I would have to guess that most of the people sitting here, show of hands, who imagines themselves working for a furniture distributor? Who imagines them working for a cutlery, a knife company? Who imagines them working for a brewery?
Wait a minute, I got one vote.
You got one vote.
I got one vote.
So here's what I want to get to. And this is where, if we don't get some questions, we don't come back next year. So start asking questions, because it's getting boring up here. Now, talk about how many technology people who might be an accounting person, how many accounting persons might be salespeople, what opportunities, when you're looking for jobs, off the beaten path, smaller privately held companies, talk about some of the opportunities that are in your company that might not be so obvious to a finance or an accounting major, where their skill set would be beneficial to your company.
Well, as I said earlier, think of what you're good at. What do you do that is who played a sport? Okay? Now, when you played that sport, were all of you made all Western New York or all whatever? No. Okay? Was it easier than biology? Tell me. I mean, when you played a sport, would you have rather been in biology class? No. Okay? The point I'm making is that you've got to, even though, I shouldn't say it that way, once you leave this fine institution, you're going to have a set of skills. But And those skills can translate to almost any industry that's out there. But you have to follow what, believe me, what's in your heart. It's really important to do what you're good at, because you'll enjoy what you're doing. A finance major can work for Nike. All of you folks that played a sport, wouldn't that be a great job? Sure, because you enjoy the athletics, you participated, you understand what team means. All of those skills, aside from your academic skills, apply to where you're going to work.
Because they sell furniture.
Oh, yeah.
So let's talk, then John, I'm gonna ask you the same question. So give me a 28 to 35-year-old established salesman, say working in a mid-sized city. What's kind of the total comp? What's their upside if they hit their numbers kind of on an average year?
For me, for my
For your
guys?
company,
For
one of your
my
guys. Yeah, one of your guys.
Oh, okay. At the lower age, 120, depending if they hit a good number during the year. Some of them are over 300.
Selling furniture, 33 years old, making 300 grand a year if you really want to work hard.
But you gotta work hard. And you have to do all the things that we just said. I mean, really, you gotta do all of them. And you gotta believe in yourself, and you gotta sacrifice, and you gotta work. And that's part of the deal. Because I promise you, you're working hard and you're sacrificing affects your life. It affects, at 35, your family, your children. You know, when there's I live in Buffalo, New York, there's a job, that I'm doing right now, and I'm way over 35, in the county of Allegheny, okay? I was there this morning because it was good for me to be there this morning, and because I was coming here, so I kind of worked it into the route. But I got a house that's leaking water when I left this morning, and my wife said, "Go make some money, pal." So I went out the door. But that's the kind of stuff you have to do. It's just not working at your job. And I would guess that most of you aren't married yet. So you got to think about that. But if you find what you're good at, it makes it a heck of a lot easier, I promise you.
Our business engages people your age and younger in selling knives. Last year, I can tell you that I had an education major that made $140,000. I've had music majors make over $200,000 selling knives. Our top salespeople were, Josh was right around $400,000. Is the top person making $400,000. I've got people that, unfortunately, when they give talks, will tell young salespeople that I had a guy that said, "I made $175,000 last year and only worked 6 months." Felt like strangling him. But because he could go out and earn more, and there's opportunities out there. Do a lot with the University of Purdue, and the University of Purdue teaches a sales class in its ag department. 45% of the students that graduate from the ag department go to work for sales companies: Monsanto, John Deere, Caterpillar, ConAgra, and they're all making base salaries in the mid 5 figures with bonuses that take them to 6. Sales is tough though, because if you're not out making the sales calls, you're not going to make money. It's a lot different than being an accountant sitting behind the computer. Our paycheck's kind of steady, but it's limited. And the important thing is, some of our best salespeople never took a business course. I can think of an MBA with not an MBA, but a bachelor's in music, who had never taken a business course, but she was a heck of a salesperson.
Or is that because of the passion?
It comes down to anything, like Kevin said, it's belief in what you're doing and having a passion about it. I've watched people do sales demonstrations that couldn't repeat the product correctly, couldn't quote the price right, and they sold $1,000 because these knives are great. You gotta have these knives. You wouldn't believe what they do. You take the shears, cut the penny in half with it, and the knife's just cut. It's wonderful. And the person's like, I'll buy it. It's like, okay, so much for 3 days of training.
So Nick, how is it sitting behind that computer with that steady paycheck?
My eyes are hurting right now.
Let's talk a little bit, any questions? Yeah, okay, we got one right in front, great.
I have one. How stressful do you
Who's the question for?
well, basically, all of you.
Okay.
On a general basis, that's to running a business. How stressful would you say that job is?
The question is, how stressful is running a business?
Do you mind if I take that first? I've barely been sleeping right now. I have 3 kids, and right now, obviously, the startup phase, I'm not getting paid for any of the work I'm doing, but I have to put hours and hours outside of my own accounting firm and being with my children. So I'm up basically till 1, 2 in the morning every night, and when I get to bed, it takes me an hour to fall asleep. I'm very stressed out at this point. I don't know how these guys sleep, but I hope to one day. But it's a huge investment. It's a huge investment in your time, and it's also a big sacrifice, as you mentioned before, with your family. Because even when you're with your family, half the time your thoughts are going to be on the business. And that's kind of a natural thing that's going to happen. You try to leave work at home, but it's definitely going to bleed into your personal life, as these guys mentioned.
I'll be honest. When I bought this company, I sold a real old Chevy Camaro, and I financed the rest. And wow, my family supported my efforts, our efforts, and I never for 1 minute thought we couldn't do it. I slept real well. I was exhausted, that's why. I always said, they say, how did you do it? I said, it was wonderful to own my own business because I could work any 16 hours of the day I wanted. And that's what it boiled down to. It just kept working. Never for a minute did I ever feel that it wasn't a place for me. It wasn't something that I wanted to do. And the old adage is, if you find something that your work is something you love to do, you don't work a day in your life. And that's my answer. It was a lot of pressure. I had a partner that stole a lot of money from us. Went through a lot of good times, more good times than bad, but bad times. But I never, ever thought that we were not going to grow and prosper. When I bought that company, the total volume for their fiscal year on June 30th, the total volume for that year was $600,000. When I sold it, 30 plus years later, it ended June. We sold it June 30th, and we did 23 million. So you don't do that alone, believe me. You do it with a lot of really good employees, a whole lot of good customers, and we represented some of the finest, and still do, finest manufacturers in the industry. So we just kept building the business, and I loved every minute.
John, would you give me
We're one of his
a quick
customers, by the
answer?
way.
Because you have a few questions. Give me a quick answer on that. What a little different question. What keeps you up at night? What do you worry about?
People. As an owner of a business,
Thank you.
our culture is very paternalistic, and we take very seriously our responsibility for our people and creating those opportunities. We've got 700 plus people, and only in New York, and over 800 throughout the United States. And that's probably the biggest thing, is making sure that we're creating an opportunity that's going to be here long term. In fact, some of that is in the succession planning and discussions, is how do we ensure that this company is going to exist after we're gone? not because of our talents, but because of all the other constraints that come in as you move ownership around. Because someone else has to buy it out, and what do you do, and how do you handle those things? It's the people. But it's a great stress because, again, if we're succeeding and our people are succeeding, it all pays off.
Got a couple questions, one right here, gentlemen, yes, sir.
My question is for the three of you. What is your motivation for success?
Question is, what motivates you to succeed?
For me,
For
oh, well, obviously it's money. One of the things is money.
Hip hip hooray.
But it goes beyond that. Quite frankly, to me, it's the growth of the company, certainly, the people in the company, and my family. That's truly what motivates you. And if you work hard and you overcome the struggles, the money will come. There's no question about it. You got to believe in yourself, work hard, and be in the right business, of course, which I said. So, but money isn't always the motivator. Let me give you an example. I said I went to Harvard Business School. One of the things that they took a few of us. It's a Harvard Business School. One was Eric, and they took the professors, because everything is done on a case study method. And they were trying to build a case study, I think. They brought 4 or 5 of us old guys to lunch, and they asked, tell us how your career progresses and how, as you evolve through your career, how it changes your life, right? And what they asked me, and I said, at some point in your life, you cross a bridge, and hopefully you do it sooner rather than later. But when you cross that bridge, all the stuff that your mom told you when you were like 9, what's important, the health of your family, all of those things. Excuse me, I'm dry. They truly are what's important, okay? And once you recognize that, it'll change your life. So, for Nick's age, money's really important. His life is on the line right now, okay? Not mine. I've crossed that bridge. And that truly is what, when you realize that's what success is, it'll change your life.
Well, to take back from a Bohdanowycz class in Maslow hierarchies of needs, Kevin's 100% correct. Once you get to those basic levels of having enough to make sure that you can exist, it's not building wealth, but just exist. Some of the other attributes start to kick in. And definition of success is if your organization, if you can create, and this doesn't matter whether you're in a business or running and working in some form of a nonprofit. If you can take a vision and you can take an organization and you can achieve the goals long-term by doing what's right, that defines success. And in a business, the money will come with that. In the nonprofits or the charitable endeavors, you succeed in making the world a better place. But the principles go across both. So it's really understanding that aspect of yourself and what you want to accomplish. And it comes long-term. We don't make short-term decisions. We don't worry about a quarter profit. We're making decisions on the long term to make the business viable.
And Nick, you're taking a long walk on a short pier right now, aren't you?
Yeah, for me, it comes down to family and basically leaving, something for my kids, I guess. But, going back to what these guys are talking about, I think it stems from really taking pride in whatever it is you're doing and maximizing not only the opportunity, but the possibility to learn something and to make something better than it was before.
There was another question, yes, sir.
You guys kind of alluded to work-life balance throughout. What are some ways that you guys have found to kind of maintain the family aspect while still pursuing your passion for your work?
What do you mean by family? A marriage?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I will tell you that in my early years, I screwed that up. I didn't give my sons enough time growing up. I mean, when they're Nick's children's ages, that I lost out on some opportunities. I'm able, thank goodness, to still catch those times now as they're the ages of you folks and being able to spend time with them. But that's a very difficult thing to do because sometimes you take the perceived needs to do too much and not recognize that there's sacrifices. And there will be sacrifices. There are some days and weeks that you don't have a choice. And Kevin's comment about his wife saying, you go make some money, I'll call the plumber, I'll take care of the problem, is an example where those are choices you make. But it's a very difficult thing, and luckily I had a wife that was very understanding and supportive of me doing those things. But it puts a lot of strain on a lot of marriages for young people when they don't get that balance right. So it's a very difficult challenge.
Yeah, for me, it was a little more complicated because I was a stay-at-home dad for my first two, and my third one, the surprise baby, as I call him.
Whoops.
I feel constantly guilty when I'm thinking about work, playing with a 1-year-old, because I invested a lot of my emotional time with the first two. So for me to not have that with my third child, it kills me. But you have to look at it overall, like was mentioned before. You have to make money for your family, so it's there's it's understandable I act like that way, but it's painful almost when you're with such a young kid, and you should be enjoying your time with them, but you're worrying about something else.
Let me just jump in here too, because I was in the finance world, where many of you want to be bankers, and I was on the road 180 days out of 250 work days a year, whatever the work days are, all around the world. When I first started, after about a month, I walked in the house and I got punched right between the eyes from my wife. Literally, who the hell do you think you are? You think, because I just went and didn't even talk. From that day on, I couldn't call home enough just to say hello. And after a while, and I was traveling every single week. From 1996 until 2000, I did not go one day without getting a voicemail and answering it, except when I went on the Disney cruise in October '99, because there was no phones and no faxes. There was no cell phones back then, heaven forbid. But the best advice I'll give you is if you do choose to go after it, and you have a spouse or a significant other, that person cannot be envious of you being out of the house, or you both have to like what you're doing. Because if one is jealous, it's over. The other thing, my wife and I decided a long time ago, whenever we talked on the phone, neither of us bitched about anything. Because nobody wants to hear you bitch. I just got off a flight. I landed in Tokyo. I went to a meeting. I had a dinner. I had to be out she doesn't want to hear that I went out to a dinner. When she's got 2 crying kids, hell, you went out to dinner. I'm changing diapers. And I'm sure, Nick, you've got the same thing. So, again, that's the balance you've got to strike. And I think it's communication. And you have to there has to be buy-in and support, or else it's over. And it's over fast. A real quick story. We had a gentleman who worked for us at Bankers Trust and Deutsche Bank. One of the most successful guys. He lived in Chicago, came to New York every week. He came home one night and said to and he kind of sensed something was going on with his wife, and he found that his wife was screwing around with the neighbor, and he approached her about it, and he said, honey, I'm sorry. I will change my ways. I'll quit my job. I'll do anything to save the marriage. I'll stop traveling. True story. She goes, if not for the travel, I would have left you 14 years ago. And he was clueless for 14 years. So it's got to be a buy-in from everyone involved, or else it ends fast.
Communication is the key.
We have a question here, yes.
Yeah, I got a quick question for the three of you. Maybe not Nick yet, but at what point in your life, what age were you when you like looked in the mirror and you're like, I made it? Like, you know, like I made it. This is it. This is the money. I crossed that bridge. Like, what point in your life did you reach that?
I'll answer that first. I have a 22-year-old, a 21-year-old, and 18-year-old females. I'm never gonna make it.
I've got a son that was looking at UNC for his PhD. I've got a ways to go. But the reality is none of us are going to not be able to go out and eat a decent meal tonight. And that's where you gotta decide, what's the definition of make it in your mind? That you can retire to a beach? And never, huh?
Shoot myself in the head.
You know, what's your definition of making it? Because again, there are plenty of people in this world that don't have any money that are happy. Money itself doesn't make it. It's what you do and what you're doing with any resources you have to say, I'm good. And it's a maturity factor versus a monetary measurement in my mind.
Quite frankly, looking in the mirror, the only thing I see is my dad. Okay? Because I haven't made it yet. There's no question. That's why I'm here. That's why I work.
Well,
Ask me if I'm retired. I say almost retired.
Why are and Nick lives in town, but why are those two and me back here?
Yeah.
So the answer is I left banking in 08. And no secret. I had enough and I had enough. I didn't have enough not to work. But I said I'm tired. I got a full-time job. I got laid off from that job. I went back into my own business. So I'm 52 and this year I started another new business. We raised some money to invest in private equity with a bunch of friends. I'm so busy with little tiny paperwork, tracking down signature pages. I don't have a secretary. I'm having a ball because now I'm responsible for $2.5 million of everyone else's money. Do I hope to make 5, 6, 10 million? Yeah, of course I do. But again, you get to a point you're like, great, let's do it again. The day you say I'm done, how many people do you know that sit on a beach all day and can play golf? I know none. So you have to be bored out of your mind.
Yeah, they all the ones that I know that did it, they did it for a year. They said, I gotta find something to do.
I played 60 rounds of golf in 2008 and 2009 because I was a professor, and I never had summers off. Hell, I was like May until September. Let's see, that's 96 days. If I play golf every day, it's too many. I mean, and I got bored. I could only go out to lunch so many times. Carol, you had a question?
Well, I just wanted to return a little bit to the discussion of work-life balance because I know that Nick's wife is a professional. I don't know about John or Kevin, but I just would like to dispel the notion that your significant other has to be at home in order for you to balance things. I think it's perhaps more challenging when you're both professionals, and that may be why you were Mr. Mom for a while, but...
I think it was economic luxury these days. I think obviously most households, you need two, both mother and father working to actually sustain the home. It was actually, I thought it was very lucky to have that opportunity to stay home, and it's because of my wife that had that opportunity, and my wife is probably the most hardest working person I know. When she comes home with the kids, it's 100% the kid, 100% kids, and she could flip that switch very easily, and that's why she's amazing. And I owe everything to her.
My wife's a paralegal. She works part-time, and she goes to school. She had a associate's degree, went and got a bachelor's degree in paralegal, went and got a business bachelor's degree, and she's working on her MBA right now. And her whole logic is, if I don't keep up on the classes, if the boys ask me how to help with a paper or something, or to prove something, or to know what an AP site is, she goes, I won't know it. It's like, okay. And I'm dragged along in MBA classes now. I get to have discussions on various things that are going on in models with Sony and with Apple and China and the impact of importations. And why doesn't that affect us? And I'm like, I don't care.
But my wife is a truly skilled, inherent, genetic, financial genius. She is absolutely unbelievable. The stuff she does with money and finance and help grow that business with working in the business. She's just unbelievable. And she told me a long time ago, just as she did today, listen, buddy, you can't control money at all. I'm the worst spender. If I have $200 in my pocket, by Friday I don't have anything, and if you give me $20, I still don't have anything, so it doesn't matter. But she said, look, you go out and make the money, and I'll figure out how to keep it. So that's how it worked. But it was, we have 2 daughters, and my wife is one of 4 girls, and I have a sister who was and is one of the toughest people I've ever met, so I couldn't relate to that with my girls. And my wife knew chapter and verse of where those kids, those 2 daughters were, because of her experience and because of having all those sisters. So I kind of just went out, made the money, and it was, my wife from kindergarten to a senior in high school went to 13 different schools. At one point, she was in a 1-room schoolhouse in a little town called Averill Park, New York. I don't know if you know where that is, up near Albany. And I guess she was in like the 2nd or 3rd grade. When she took the Christmas break to be home for the Christmas holiday, when she went back to school, she went to PS 106 in the Bronx with 14 2nd grades or 3rd grades. And that was in the morning. There was 14 in the afternoon. So she went to a lot of schools, and we made a commitment to each other that we weren't. We had some other opportunities to go other places in the country, and we decided, mostly because of all those moves. She said, "We're not moving around. My girls are not doing that." So we made this commitment, and that's how we made it work. It wasn't easy, and I was probably not the best father, I'll be sure. Just like John said, I wasn't there all the time, but I wasn't traveling
That's
all over
the worst.
the
Traveling's
world.
That's hard.
I stayed in the United States for 130 days a year.
So,
And
but,
let me just say
Yeah,
one
go
more
ahead.
thing. Being at home is by far 10 times harder than
Oh, I
going
can
to work.
imagine.
When I go to work, that's when you see a smile on my face, and everybody wants to know, hey, you're so happy. I'm like, oh, just free time, free time.
yeah, my wife graduated from '86 at this school. She was an accounting major. We made a conscious decision for her to stop working because we were both running around all weekends. She left her job at Ogilvy and Mather as director of finance. She was making $55,000 a year. Now this is 89, 90, 91. It's a lot of money then. I was making 50. So it doesn't really matter because, it's not. But what happened is then we bought a house and we had $8,000 to our name, which we spent on the house. So here we are with 2 kids. I'm going to grad school. We're not working. We have no money. And I decided to get into investment banking. I think the key to success is never, ever, ever, never think about failure. I never once in my career thought I would fail. There were people making more money than me. There were people doing bigger deals. And I said, I can do that. Never once. And I have to say, I don't want to speak for him, but that is a fundamental trait that I've seen in entrepreneurs and successful people. No fear of failure. Questions? There's a couple other hands up. Yes, sir.
What have you found to be the most rewarding part of your work in 40 years?
Again, I find when I see people succeeding, that's probably the most rewarding because again, it comes back. It's a great self-motivator that if I've had the opportunity to influence anyone, one of the things I was gonna mention on the work balance life is get involved in other things outside of work and into your community. So the greatest that I can tell you the feeling was is when my sons were young, they joined scouting. I became a scout leader, and I spent a tremendous amount of time. In the first den I had of boys, 9 boys, 5 of them only had a single parent. One boy's mother had died at birth. The other 4 had no idea. I'm working with one boy one night. Another guy's helping me, goes, "Is your father so-and-so?" And the boy looks at him and goes, "I don't know, I never met him." But, fast forward 8 years later, he comes up to me on the street. Now he's 6'2". And he says, "Mr. Whelpley, do you remember me?" I'm going, "Can you give me a clue?" He tells me who he is. He's happy. He's telling me that, you know, I had an impact on his life. Now, I didn't change his life or make any of those dramatic changes, but I had an impact. And that's one of the things when you talk about a work balance as well as giving back. And again, every one of you that played sports can go coach them. And you'll be surprised how many young people you can influence in a positive way as a positive role model. And that's one of the greatest satisfactions is it's not only at work but outside of work doing those things. I'm quite frankly hopeful that one of you walk away with something I said tonight and it makes a difference in your life. It might not be today. It might be over a beer later on after the Bonnies win. It might be 10 years from now. But you might come back and think, son of a bitch, he was right.
Questions, there's a couple other hands up, anyone?
I just
Yeah.
want.
Oh, right, we'll take, yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am.
Just as young man.
Miss, yes, young lady.
Just as a future young professional, for you guys, what are you looking for in young professionals? There's like a lot of emphasis on our resumes, but when you're bringing people into your business, what is some of the main things that you look for in young professionals that you're going to hire?
I'll tell you one thing that I'm not looking for. I'm not looking for your GPA. Never in my life has anybody ever asked for a GPA. I know it's important now, but what I'm thinking about in that when you come to our place, I'm interested in how you present yourself, how you're able to talk, how you tell me about yourself. That's what I'm really. I'm interested if it's for an accounting job that you've had some accounting skills, but truly I'm interested in how you present yourself. I'm not interested in who you know. Sometimes that's very important, but not in my business. I'm interested in you and how you relate, how you found us.
I would agree with Kevin. The who you know is references that I can